Yeah.
that are actual fact and historically documented. And how does that fit into this picture? Like, do they become realized beings and then they come back and they just play in with the five elements and they're able to do these things?
No, it's a better chance that it's the other way around. They are playing with very subtle energies, powers. They are stuck with the world of subtle elements, all these manifestations of Shakti, the Siddhi powers.
So you think Babaji and Kamaji, Yogananda, Sri Yukteswar, Mahasa...
Well, we cannot know who is self-realized or not. Only the individual knows for sure. You can observe and then you can draw a conclusion, but only the individual himself knows. Of course, if you are self-realized, it's easier to know it's by what one speaks and acts. But then there are some gurus that are very smart. They decide not to speak, and then you look to the guru. Yeah, I know. I'm just illustrating, making it a little more fun. But the powers that they experience, by the mind, they are developed, they are acquired. Some of them come with savasana for those kinds of siddhi powers. And chances are that you play with that as we play with physical material universe until you get tired of that, and then you go and ask yourself, begin inquiring into your most fundamental question, which is, what and who am I?
Well, I don't think they use it. Doesn't seem like they use their powers to impress other people or do something like that. They would only, in circumstances where they were with another person, that it would help them along their way.
There's no better way to help anybody except by conveying them knowledge and help them to understand their own nature, you understand?
And of course they did that as well.
Yeah. So every time this question is placed by someone, a sage, a self-realized sage, they usually say, don't be bothered with those things. Those are distractions in one process of evolution. And we heard it from many, many senses, and now I understand it firsthand. It's another trick of Maya to distract someone, powers. And there was, who said that? I was going to tell a little, Papaji. Papaji, in his quest, he was going all over the India because he was fixated. He wanted to find a God that would stay with him, because Krishna would come and go and it would require a lot of sadhana on his side. So he wanted to find a God that would remain permanent. He went all over India traveling, looking for anyone that he heard that, that man knows what God is. And then he went to a place in a small village, very bordering the forest, the woods. And because there he heard that there was a Siddhi living there, Swami, Sadhu, whose Siddhic powers living there. And he used to live there for hundreds of years, and he would come out only eventually. And people told Papaji, so if you want, you go there, but it's very difficult to find him. So Papaji went there and asked all his questions, and then began entering the forest. And then as he was entering, the Siddhi came out, the sannyasi came out, the sadhu came out to meet him and to welcome him. It seems that he knew Papaji was approaching. And then Papaji says that they had beautiful encounter, and the Siddhi had all this power. The first thing he did is invite Papaji for lunch or breakfast, and he manifests a beautiful breakfast out of a thin air. And then they had this physical manifest breakfast, and then after that he transpired to Papaji that he invited Papaji because he wanted to get darshan from Papaji. He had all these powers, but still he did not know exactly what God was. He did not know that I am God, I am already free. So there are a lot of small stories here and there that describes this distinction, small of between the city with all its powers and the sage who knows one's own nature. And yeah. And a lot of people have those powers, but they prefer not to show it, because when you show, and then you have this huge crowd that is very impressed about phenomena, and if the teacher is a teacher of willing to help people to be established free as the self, he does not want to feed on those kinds of curiosities. I have some people in Brazil that keep asking these questions, and I keep point them to the fact that those questions are not conducive to self-knowledge. It's just an itching of the mind that is attracted by these kind of things, So it's better to leave it alone and just go for what there is the best in life, which is self-knowledge, moksha, freedom. But some people may be so attracted that one may have to go through that, contact a CD. I had someone here in Tao that was begging me like, oh, there is a seed there, let's go. I say, yes, tomorrow, until she stopped bothering me with wanting to take me here and there. And it's someone who has been with Ramji for years, but it still did not understand the real value of self-knowledge in reference to the value of objects,
I actually met one, I won't mention their name, but because I also was inspired by the biography. And so I went through India for a time exploring the mysteries of this siddhas, their powers. And I know one in particular, he's in Pune. And yes, he has an impressive shakti, an impressive power. However, the knowledge, that the capacity for his to impart knowledge on the student was still lacking. So I still walked out wondering and seeking, continuing my seek. So yes, there are powers, but that doesn't matter. What is that? Do they have the ability to transfer their knowledge onto the student? Otherwise, we just walk out as ignorant as we came in.
Yeah, this is an example of a guru such as Papaji, with a lot of power, a lot of shakti, a lot of presence, and having an impact on people, but yet not having a mean of knowledge. So an example of someone, from what Andre is saying, someone self-realized, but yet falling short as far as to help others, to facilitate others by unfolding the teachings. Not like some gurus that have just small bits and pieces, fragments of teachings. And then they can help still, but the help is more limited because they have only small bits and pieces of teachings.
So what is this tendency, universally, as observed, for individuals to be more attracted or so attracted to experience versus knowledge? Why is this experience so attractive?
Because what brings us again and again into life is this universal vasana for experience. So experience is the most fundamental vasana, is the mother of all other vasanas. You have this extroversion, a mind who still is deceived by the notion that it has to contact something here as a means to complete and satisfy itself, to secure, to make one's content, happy, and so on. So this is an extroversion. The mind is awareness, reflect in the subtle body, produce the jiva, and the jiva is extrovert towards objects. This is the most fundamental vasana, and we come with it. It's already in here. When you're a baby, we already all have that extroversion. And then when we move into the spiritual world, things do not change. We keep projecting the self on an object of experience. But now I say the self is a spiritual object. It's a mystical experience. It's a subtle experience. It's an epiphany, or it's this and that. There are all of these symbols of the self, which are objects on which we superimpose the self. We superimpose Satya on Mithya, and we keep chasing those objects. So the game goes on. If before I was chasing a new car, the latest model of a car, now I'm chasing the latest and juicier spiritual experience I heard. And one is trapped, because this is the most fundamental tendency, vasana, that brings it all forth. You're going to say something, Samadhi? No?
Yes, I can share something what created confusion for me some years ago when I started to study Vedanta.
Mm-hmm.
In Vedanta, for example, yesterday, the verse says, "My nature is bliss." Before we said, existence is my bliss,
right.
Consciousness is my nature, existence is my nature, and Ananda is my nature. When I started to study Vedanta, I was thinking, how it is one reality and three different natures. And I was very confused, because we say very clearly, Sat, Chit, Ananda.
Yeah.
And it was confusion for me. But going through self-inquiry and teaching, we understand that it is one nature.
Yeah.
And why we are using this Sat Chit Ananda, why Upanishad says Sat Chit Ananda? And I found out that it is because of conditioning in terms, gross body, subtle body, and causal body. Existence reveals itself more clearly in gross body, consciousness in subtle body, and bliss, we can say, and causal body is Ananda. But it is, as James says, the mass of consciousness, one nature. So it was confusion. Three parts, it's not parts, I'm undivided. But it's...
That's something very nice that Samadhi say. When we hear Sat Chitananda, the Sat is most referred or relate to the material existence of the universe, because it's easier for us to say the universe exists, because it's not something, it's very substantial, even though it's a mistake of apprehension, because the universe does not exist. Existence or consciousness exists as the universe, but we get things revert. So, but it's interesting what Samadhi said, because existence is more tangibly perceived as the physical universe, and then consciousness or knowledge is more perceived in the subtle body as the intellect, and then Ananda is easily perceived as the state of deep sleep, Nirvikalpa Samadhi, and so on, which is fullness and completion. So I never heard, and from that standpoint, it's very nice. Thank you. Yeah.
Arvindo, I'll be happy if you can end this Shakti story for me, because to my knowledge, I've never had a single Shakti experience. So when people talk about the Shakti was so strong, they say, oh, you feel this energy in this temple? It's like, no, because I never feel it. So it feels, for most of my life, it felt like it's just people that are chasing rainbows and they imagine things.
They are deluded.
Yeah, that's how it feels, because I never had the experience. So, you hear enough people say it, and you're like, I can't dismiss it, nor can I really just accept it.
Right.
So the question is, when somebody with a lot of Shakti, like Papaji, there are people in there who are not feeling the Shakti.
They are not feeling it. Some people, yeah. Well, the mind has to be calm and quiet and sattvic. One has to have that mental sensibility to get it. You know, if you are not like that, in that moment you don't feel the energy of certain place, certain temple. But if the mind is more receptive, more subtle, it can gain, because they are very subtle energy, subtle objects, you know. So it's more like that. If one has a very intellectual tendency to dismiss anything in the subtle energy, subtle universe, one is going to say, no, I don't buy into this BS. And that can prevent one from being available to contact those subtle energies, you know. It's, yeah, you can feel it. You can feel it in the ashram. Have you felt in the ashram sometime? You can feel it here, especially when we start building it. It's a certain energy that affects our mind and conforms our mind. So you feel that silence that is coming as a byproduct of your contact with the object, the other, the environment. When we go to the marketplace or to New York City or so on, and there is a lot of traffic and everything is very busy, so our mind is affected by this intensity of rajas. So it's everything in the field affects everything else. So our mind gets conditioned by that. Same way when we go to certain place, the mind is going to be affected by the environment. You go to the ashram, you go to satsang, and so on. Most people go to satsangs of these modern gurus. Moji is one of them because he has thousands of people, his satsangs are big, and then the energy field is so big, people think that's all coming from him. But it's coming from everybody throwing their devotion to the guru, and then it remains in the environment and it comes. People go there and the energy is so strong that they don't want to leave it anymore. They are there for the Shakti, for the energy, for the peace of the mind that the field provides. You know. But as we know, to develop a sattvic mind is the first step. A quiet, silent mind is the first step. The second step is to feed it with self-inquiry, self-knowledge. Otherwise, the mind modifies again with the modification of the three energies. And then we come out of that state, and the first thing we think is, I want to be back into that environment. People keep coming back to Tiro, and they may not know, but they come back to Tiro again and again in spite of this dirt and very aggressive, toxic environment. We come back here because nearly everybody consciously or unconsciously experience the Shakti from the mountain and from the ashram, this devotional Shakti that somehow resolves the mind, it somehow quiets the mind. And this is...
How would one know when they sat here that the Shakti they were feeling was from a particular direction, from the mountain versus from the guru?
It's from the environment, yeah.
What I mean is, how would you know that it's from the mountain other than everyone saying it's from the mountain? What's the...
Well, it's... the first thing, the mountain is filled with the energy, devotional energy that millions of devotees give to it. Okay, so we can say that at the root of that, the mouse, Ramana said, I don't know if he read or somebody told him that this mountain is the embodiment of Shiva. I don't know where that concept comes from. But the fact is that somehow everybody comes here and worship the mountain. And the mountain is stuffed, filled with energy, and if you pay attention to the mountain, you can feel it. Or if you go in the hall, in the ashram, and you sit, or in the meditation room, and if your mind gets a little more quiet, you can feel that that environment is going to facilitate your meditation, as an example. Okay. So fundamentally, people come to Chiru because of that. And this is the most precious thing there is, because as we have already understood and established, happiness is a function of our state of mind. The mind is our primary instrument. Depending on its condition, we're going to enjoy or suffer our experience. The suffering or the pleasure is not in the object, it's in the condition of the mind. So if you go to a place where your mind relaxes and becomes subtle and sensitive, and you start enjoying yourself, so you are getting joy without needing any object, because the joy is coming from your mind. And then of course we think like, okay, the object here is the mountain, the object is the ashram, the object is my sadhana. But it's just when the mind, all those excess of rajas and tamas somehow subsides, the mind becomes a happy mind, like I said the other day, which was a very nice kind of rhyme. Say, a sattvic mind is a happy mind. So, if you want to be happy, so cultivate and maintain a sattvic mind in every sense. You're going to experience this inner joy, and you're going to be able to respond, read the stimuli of the field, read the situation, and respond more appropriately, and therefore make less mistake. Mistakes still happen. There is a moment that your mind is a little bit like that, and we may make a small mistake. You understand? So we are fundamentally, we are inquirers, we are yanis. We don't care much I understand you from that standpoint. You're yani, you want knowledge. You don't care much to this, you know?
Actually, I do care. I want to know if it's true. And I don't have the instrument that can determine if it's true other than by hearing everyone talk about it.
So, maybe there is something there in you, because you are so much into knowledge that you say, no, I don't care for this energy, which is, it's a good thing. We can get so much distracting energy, you know? What is energy? It's just a subtle object. But at the same time, we want to, we know that to develop and maintain a contemplative mind is the most fundamental thing for anyone in pursuit of moksha. Because we need a contemplative mind. So we're going to do what we're going to do. The best way to maintain, to purify the mind is Karma Yoga and self-inquiry. But for some people, Karma Yoga is difficult, self-inquiry is difficult, and then, okay, let's do experiential meditation, let's do dualistic bhaktis, some rituals, some mantras, or whatever. So anything that helps the mind to calm down. But it's important to keep in mind the fact that our goal is not a quiet mind. Quiet mind is the platform on which we will do our self-inquiry. It's just a means. Quiet mind is a means to an end, and the end is moksha, self-knowledge and moksha. Yes?
It could be also very dangerous to get stuck in sattva. I find it as an impediment sometimes, you know? You get lost in this sattvic, shakti energy, and you don't look ahead somehow, you know?
The self does that over and over again. It begins by identifying with an object called the physical body, and then it identifies with the thoughts and the mind, the intellect, and then it ends up identifying with the subtle body, those states of mind. But an object is an object. So we need to keep doing the Satyamitra discrimination in the sense, if it's something other than myself, you know, if I can objectify, see, perceive, and know it's something other than myself, therefore it's bound by time. It's gonna leave me, it's gonna depart.
Also that blissful state of mind is also an object.
Of course it is. We had an exchange, It is an object of experience, and the proof of that is that it's not permanent. There is one factor which is always ever present. You, me, everybody, consciousness. our own limitless existence. Always ever present. That never leaves us. What leaves us are the objects in meteor. Does it clarify?
Yeah, at the same time, is like the essence of awareness or not. It's not the energy, it's the same, I'm confused. It's the same kind of energy which is, what energy? I don't know, I have to think about
Awareness.
it. Doesn't have any energy. I don't know, I have to think about it.
Yeah, energy. Awareness is not energy. Energy is a modification in awareness, and the first modification, once Maya comes into play, is sattva. Okay, sattva. Sattva energy is the first modification. It's a seed of the universe. It contains all knowledge, all memories, all intelligence, and so on. To project, to maintain, to recycle, the whole show over and over again. We need to keep going through the Satya Mithya, especially for some of us who have the tendency to play with, Anandamaya Kosha, those subtle, delicious, beautiful, yummy objects of experience. We need to be very alert not to be stuck there. Because it is seductive. No, I mean, if it's not all, remember Papaji, if you read the story of Papaji came and Ramana said to him, so what is the good of having this beautiful Krishna that if it's not always with you? Is he right now here with you? Or no, I have to do some work to produce it. Say, what is the good of having that, which is a byproduct of action, of sadhana, effort, It's okay for some time, and then we get tired of these states that are not permanent. So that's, we have the Brazilian. Who has raised? It was you?
I want to say something to what Dave said, actually.
Okay, give just a moment to our friends. They are just come. Kalin, and there are several chairs there, some chairs in front. So let's spread out and see if there is any chair missing. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 chairs in front. There are 5 chairs in front if the Brazilians. Our Vedantins coming from Brazil. What is funny, Gabriel? Why he's having a good time?
The best joke what I have it in the last 3 months was that with you don't have it, you go in this deep sleep, but you put it in a funny way.
Yeah.
It's the only chance.
Okay.
You're getting famous, are you know?
No, these are friends from Brazil. I stayed 2 years in Brazil, so there is a sangha that began developing there.
Nagar,
Yeah. So
se a gente conseguiu a senha do Wi-Fi daqui, porque o texto está lá no grupo nosso do WhatsApp.
the Wi-Fi here is very poor.
But it's enough.
You did okay,
Suficiente para baixar
and then
o PDF só.
and then you go there and you find it.
Does someone know the Wi-Fi password here?
Doesn't work up here.
Oh, you have to go down there, Kalin. Go there in the office, download it, keep it, and then you will have it. Because here the Wi-Fi does not work. You need to open the file down there. Nobody has it. Jennifer made it. There is one chair here. If any one of you want to come closer, there is a chair here, just in case. And any of you in the back, try to position yourself that we can keep eye contact, okay? So what you want to say, Sylvia?
I want to say something. They only
Yeah, Dave. Yeah, he's busy. Jennifer, I'm happy you made it.
I am too. I've been in bed. And maybe I'm asking something else.
Yeah, Dave, Sylvia wants to say something in connection to what you said before.
So, I'm not sure if it's like, isn't it also only a question of belief? In the sense, like, it always is what you say it is. Like, not only depending on a subject mind. Because if you don't allow that symbol, whatever it is, the mountain, the Shivalingam, whatever, to affect you, it will not do it. So, like, maybe, like, you have a subject mind, but you don't want, or on a deeper level, to be affected from the outside, then it will also not happen.
Yeah, that's on the lines of what I was saying as well, you know. I mean, you need to be open to that. If you have a, no, I don't care for it, chances are that you don't tune in with those subtle objects, because you're interested in knowledge, as an example, you understand? So one has to be available and open for and sensible to those subtle energies.
Because also, for example, in Ramana Ashram, like, yes, there is this energy in the samadhi, but depending, there are always different levels. Like when I go to this, I don't like to go to the ashram at all, because there are so many people and they're all not like completely like purified. So I pick up a lot of energies which are kind of mixed or like not pure. Like I'm very sensitive when I sit here, like feel the energies of other people. Sometimes I like even it extends to thoughts or like things like this. So and I talk to people who are like also very sensitive, who don't pick up the peace then, but pick up another level. So like I just want
What's your point?
that I don't think it's only depending on
Yeah, that we have established already. Yeah. And as far as being sensitive to all the energies in the field, it's unavoidable. It's something. The field, everything is affect everything else. Some people get into this obsession. I know someone who is a guru, and he's so fixated with energy that he has a sangha, he does satsangs and so on, and he's a guy who meditates for 8-10 hours. I mentioned him as an example a few times of someone who is stuck in sattva, and he meditates and meditates and meditates, and he thinks that anything may be disturbing his energy. So every time there is a new group coming for his retreats, the new people have to sit in the back, because he does not want to be affected by their energy, you know. And not only, before he opens his satsang sessions, he meditates for 3 hours, 4 hours, he turns the chair towards the wall and he keeps the back to the Sangha.
It's just mad, yeah.
Yeah, so that he does not get affected by people's energy. I mean, this is both BS, ignorance. If one knows, who he is, one is not obsessed about what kind of encounter one is going to have with the field. One knows that every encounter is just mithya. Even if someone would affect my mind a little bit, what is it? I'm not my gunas. I'm not those modifications, those vrittis. And the mind, under that knowledge, reestablishes itself again and again, without giving in to those rajas and tamas, which remains stable. So you find a lot of wrong notions in the spiritual world that they look very appealing, they look like wisdom, but they are basically ignorance dressed up as wisdom, So if we decide that we need to have a perfect environment and only certain energies I'm going to allow, to come in contact with me, so I'm setting up myself for frustration and failure because one has to become a sannyasi, go to a beautiful cave somewhere and live there. You don't have any external energies contacting you. So I have a good friend who is often studying with me, who has a fixation, for example, for the environment. And the environment, it may be helpful as a means to begin your sadhana, but when you become an inquirer, you cannot be dependent on the environment. No, it has to be perfect, no silence, no smell, no this. No? So if you set yourself up that way, you are just defeating the very purpose of your sadhana, which is establish your freedom from dependence on objects, Yeah.
That might be part of Prarabdha Karma still.
It's a vasana that's playing until one understands it, and the purpose of our group is to bring up every object by which we are deceived by Maya, and we identify, we say this is what it is. People who are obsessed with silence, they are in trouble. The universe makes sound. One of the elements created in the universe is sound. It comes from air, space, and then air, and then from air comes sound, and then the ability to capture the sound, this sense instrument, it develops. Now we come here and say, hey, Ishvara, I don't like this sense organ and the sound, I don't like it, The universe should be mute. So if you are fixated with silence, you are putting yourself into a lot of trouble because the universe is not mute. There is sound going on all the time. Why not to listen to the sound as, with a positive attitude? Thank you, Ishvara. Oh, this machine cutting metal. Thank you. I'm a little bit tired because it's going on since many hours, but no, it's your creation, sound, beautiful, one of the elements. Kalin, everything in place?
Yes. Just, that's it.
Okay, your group is bigger than you said. Everybody there is going to follow your translation?
Yeah,
Okay.
they are trying to first see if they understand you, and then...
Yeah, if they understand, because it's more easily understandable when they sit closer and they follow the spelling in my lips. So it's easier for them if they want to spread in front here to follow, okay? Okay, let's go for our invocation. So I thank you everybody here for the patience and the good attitude in accommodating the new group. And let's do our best to make it work nicely. Sada Shiva Samarambam Shankara Sharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Dakshinamurtiya Namaha Sarvedanta Siddhanta Gocharam Tamagocharam Govidam Paramanandam Satchiguru Pranatoshmaham. Shanti Ramji Dayananda Shankara. Verse 61. The self, your essential nature. So my voice is a little bit weak. I'm coming close, see if you need to adjust. The self-awareness can be known by anyone with discrimination. Anyone with a certain degree of discrimination, because as we know, everyone possesses the faculty of discrimination. But to discriminate the self from those very, very extreme subtle objects with which the self identifies, being the number one subtlety, the subtle intellect, or those experienced in Anandamaya Kosha, is a very subtle sort of discrimination to isolate the self from those objects. It's almost as subtle as in that story of the milk getting mixed up with water.
Slightly to the left. The milk got mixed up with the water, and now we need to discriminate with the water from the milk. It's a very subtle separation. So we all have this faculty of discrimination. Anyone, and therefore the self-awareness can be known by anyone. But the mind, as we know, needs to develop a certain subtlety of purification so that such a subtle discrimination can be effective. The self is self-luminous. It is a partless whole. It is distinct from the five sheets. It is the witness of the three states of experience. So in the three spaces of experience, as the very name says, awareness becomes the knower and the experience of objects. There are three states: the awaker, the dreamer, and the deep sleeper. So the self is the witnessing principle, or the awareness witnessing the three states. When the state changes, we think I change. Because before I was the sleeper, now I'm awaker, now I'm a dreamer. No? And then the verse is saying that the self is the witness of the three states. It does not change with experience. And the self is self-luminous. It's a partless whole. It's one without the other. That's why the scriptures say the nature of the self is non-duality. The nature of reality is a non-duality. There is only one self, and Tatvamasi. You are that. The self is changeless and untainted. It does not get mark or fact. Nothing can make a spot. It's untainted by anything that the self is in contact with. The best analogy
in these regards, in this context, to explain, to understand the nature, the all-pervasive and unmodified nature of the self, is to bring the analogy of the space. So the space is the container of the universe, although actually the space is one of the elements of the of creation of Maya, in which all other elements get combined to create the universe of names and forms. So space is the most fundamental element, and in which all other elements develop and appear. So any object in the space is occupying the space for a period of time, even if it's a beautiful Roman cathedral. You know? Oh, it's standing for 3,000 years, 2,000 years, but we know one time that cathedral was not there, and one day it will no longer be there. Everything here is subject to time. So any space, any object occupying space is transient. It comes and it goes. And does this space get any mark, any effect? Any spot goes into the space? No, the space remains unaffected, untainted by any object occupying its own existence. The verse begins with a bold assertion. Vedanta is very bold. It's counterintuitive, bold, and challenging, radical, and we need to have a certain mind with the ability to stay open and expand to receive a lot of notions that are absolutely out of our little box called my mind. So we need to have this ability. Among the bold assertions, the scriptures say, the self is available to anyone able to discriminate the self from the not self. This means that you and I, by applying the proper means, what is a proper means? Proper means any knowledge requires a mean of knowledge. If we want to learn about science, we need a scientific subject or data, study, investigations from previous people, scientific data, and then we follow that, and then we develop knowledge. We cannot become a doctor without going for college and university for 5-10 years. We need a means of knowledge. And this self-knowledge is available to anyone able to discriminate. This means that you and I, by applying the proper means of knowledge, the knowledge as presented by the scriptures, can know our true nature as pure consciousness. Right? This is to make a very clear point. It's not enough to go somewhere and hear the Guru say, oh, you are consciousness, and all there is you, consciousness. Nothing more exists. It feels good, it's beautiful, you may have an epiphany when you hear that for the first time, but it's not enough. You need a complete teaching, a teaching that is going to address all those bits and pieces of wrong notions that are going to keep challenging the statement, the most fundamental statement of the scripture, that you are that Tatvamasi. So we need to keep working on neutralizing wrong notions. We cannot neutralize wrong, misleading misconceptions unless we have a logic, to back up our analysis. If we're not convinced by logic, and the logic should not be philosophical, metaphysical, it has to be a logic based on our own experience of life, which was not properly examined. So we need logic, otherwise the mind is never convinced. So by applying this means of knowledge presented by the scriptures, we can realize that we are pure consciousness. Self-knowledge, however, is not of the same order as objective knowledge, but it's rather the realization of our identity. So this is a very subtle point. A lot of people, keeps coming back to that. And the self-knowledge is not of the same order of reality of any objective knowledge. The jiva extracts knowledge in reference to objects in the field. We contact objects and then we gain knowledge. Well, we make use of the knowledge already established in our environment, from scientific knowledge and so on, or knowledge that we pick up from our teachers and parents and so on. So all knowledge we have is only and always in reference to some object in media. So self-knowledge does not belong to this suborder of reality called media. Yeah? It's altogether a different kind of knowledge. It's rather the realization of one's own nature. As the knower. The knower knows about many small things happening in the field. But then you say, now, the knower wants to have self-knowledge. And then the knower gets in contact with the body of knowledge called the scriptures. And then it's possible that the knower somehow gets stuck with the scripture knowledge and think that the scripture knowledge is self-knowledge. To know the scriptures does not mean to know I am the limitless self. The scripture is just the means to neutralize ignorance. What is the ignorance? I am the limit body-mind construct bound by time. The scripture just is a means of knowledge with the potential to neutralize or cancel our wrong notions, to free the jiva from knowledge and ignorance, so that the jiva realize, I'm not knowledge, I'm not ignorance, those are objects appearing to me, but by the way, the knowledge of the scriptures have revealed my ignorance and neutralized it. Now I'm free from knowledge and ignorance. So this is self-knowledge, is awareness, knowing itself to be awareness as an experienced entity, because awareness experiences and knows only with the aid of the human jiva. It experiences through many other jiva bodies. But we have a more sophisticated intellect which allows us to know the knower. Awareness knowing itself with the aid of a human intellect. That is self-knowledge. Whenever the word knowledge is used in connection with the self, this distinction should be borne in mind. Vedanta has been called the universal religion, although religion is a misleading term, as it implies dogmatic authority. So it says here that Vedanta is the universal religion because every religion structure we find in the world has its base in the Vedic text. Every religion structure is born from the Vedic text. Whether people who originate those religions have been in contact with the Vedic text or not, it's irrelevant. But the bits and pieces of knowledge that the person somehow developed has its roots on the Vedic scriptures.
I have to raise a question because it's important to me right now. You mentioned something about using the intellect, awareness using the intellect to understand. Can you repeat that?
It's going to become clear as we go by. Let me just carry on right now here. I will go back to that. Although religion is a misleading term, as it implies dogmatic authority, Vedanta is not a blind faith in that sense. Vedanta is a means of knowledge suitable for export from its native culture. Vedanta is a means of knowledge suitable for export from its native culture. What it means? That we can pull it, disengage it from the Vedic culture. Yeah, that's very nice. People sometimes see the style. We had a couple of people recently here, and then they came, they stayed for 1 hour, and then they say, oh, this is not traditional Vedanta, right? I said it's traditional Vedanta, but present in a non-traditional way. That's how my teacher, and I'm doing this, presenting, sharing the teachings. The teachings are the essence of traditional Vedanta, but they are present not in a traditional way. What is the traditional way? Begin with a Swami, a sannyasi, dressed in orange, and then an ashram, and then some Sanskrit words, pujas.
Taught to sannyasis.
Huh?
Taught to sannyasis.
Taught
to sannyasis.
Yeah, taught to sannyasis with a few inclusions of Westerns that have been reaching those environments as well. So Ramji did something that it's amazing. He brought the nectar of Vedanta to the householders all over the world, So if before one had to drop out of their own Prarabdha karma and go into an ashram and so on to learn Sanskrit first and this and that, and then begin being introduced to the knowledge of the scriptures. So we have Ishwara using Ramji to just impart the teachings to householders in the West as he travels around. And I follow his footsteps in that sense. And it works. It works because those people, first it's like planting seeds of the truth that sooner or later is going to spring and grow. But here and there we find those souls that are so ready and prepared and craving for it, people who have been misled in the spiritual world to believe that the self is something other than the individual, seeking the self on something other than one's own self. Those people, when they hear Vedanta, they say, oh my God, that's the missing link. And so it works. That's what it says here. It does not depend on its background, the Vedic background. Does not need to be presented in the context of the Vedas. But not everyone with a hunger for truth has an equal appetite for Vedic ritual, and Vedanta needs to be aligned to it. In fact, there are many statements in the Upanishads which dismiss ritual worship as meaningless for the one who is more involved. So here and there we hear, in this text it's going to come out, when Shankara says so, for the one who understands the truth, all these rituals is just like a small pound of water in a flooded land. It means nothing. There is water all over the place, and now you present me with a ritual which is a small, So it's just it's a means to purify the mind, all these action-oriented sadhanas, nothing more. But when we come to a certain degree or extent on our spiritual development, and then we developed a value for the knowledge as presented by the Upanishads, and we see those previous activities as meaningless from my standpoint, but meaningful for many other people. Such worships, this ritual generally takes the form of a prayer or a petition. It's a kind of spiritual quid pro quo or bargain in which one offers ritual to a deity in return for favors that boils down to that. You know, it's a romantic way to make a bargain with God. It's a romantic, spiritual way to say, hey God, I'm going to sacrifice this and that, I'm going to, you know, keep you in mind and go around the mountain, so on, but give me something. We don't need that. We have, under the umbrella of Vedanta, we have Karma Yoga and Dharma Yoga. When we understand Karma Yoga, we understand what is the best worship, what is the best prayer. Appropriate action. In proper time, appropriate action, and in harmony with the field, and in harmony with the goal you want to achieve. There is no better prayer than that, no better worship. So we are smart, we are mature individuals. We understood that. We are not out there saying, hey, Ishwara, give me. I want $5 million, Ishwara, give. And then Ishwara is up there, hey, buy the lottery ticket. We are not even buying the lottery ticket, you know. So we need to, participate. We need to contribute. Ramji loves to use this word. Offer a contribution, you know. It's not about me. I need, I want. It's just, life is a given and taken. It's an exchange, you know, and we need to act in harmony with the Lord and contribute to the field. And that is our bhakti, that is our devotion. The highest form of devotion, the highest form of worship is devotion to knowledge, the scriptures. It is the highest form of devotion. Very few people understand it. Because you are not asking anything, you are just in love with the truth, and you want it to be firmly realized in your heart as I am the ever free, limitless self. As the self needs nothing, it has no use for this kind of worships and prayers, right? We understood that the self needs nothing. So once we have this clear in mind, why I'm going to be going around asking the mountain, give me this, give me that, give me this, give me that. I understood that I need nothing. I have established my identity as the self. I can go for fun. I say, oh, let's do it. I want to see if I can go. I want to see if I can climb the mountain. And then like Dave said, so I go up there to see if there is a point in the mountain where there is a lot of Shakti coming. So out of, play, curiosity, we may even do some of these rituals. But for the one with the knowledge, the understanding, you don't do it for the sake of gaining anything. Because you know that the self needs nothing. It's whole, full, and complete. In its own nature. Not as a byproduct of any action or an effect of any cause. Vedanta can stand on its own. It is as changeless as the self. This is very nice. Vedanta stands on its own. It does not require any body of knowledge to validate or how you say, there is another word, to validate and support it. Okay? It's self-validated, it's self-supporting. If we submit our minds to Vedanta, we'll see that it stands on its own. We don't need to do some other research from other sources of knowledge to validate or support the statements, because we support it.
Yeah, that's the definition of a pramana, isn't it?
Yeah.
That it requires no other to validate it.
Yeah. So we validate it. We validate it because we follow the logic of the scriptures, which is based on our own experience, and say, yes, oh my God, this is brilliant. Only Ishwara could bring these things to our attention, Because every human being having such an extrovert mind would not pay attention to something so simple at the same time, so clear and truthful. it's another thing that says here, and it is as changeless as the self. So the scriptures do not change. The same principles, the same notions, the same knowledge, body of knowledge, pointing to the self and revealing the self by the removal of those misconceptions that we hold so dearly to us. The body of knowledge remains the same for thousands of years. Sometimes comes someone like Shankaracharya and then gives a new composition, play with words, and then say, very nice the way he's putting it, very nice, but it's the same knowledge. It's all absolutely conformed to the original teachings of the Upanishads. Most of what we have been contemplated upon are the words of Shankara, which were more or less registered or taken or written 1200 years ago. And but they are totally in harmony with the Upanishads. They are beautiful and very well organized. He organized, even this text is nicely organized. The way he begins discriminating everything, he begins from the scratch, the importance of the teaching, the teacher, the development of Shraddha, other qualifications, and then he begins by and by, building on discriminating from the denser to the subtle and subtle and subtle, and then after doing several aspects of this discrimination, he goes into other aspects of our existence as awareness. The communication of the teaching is necessarily conditioned by cultural circumstances which are subject to change. He's saying that Vedanta stands on its own, but the communication of the teaching is necessarily conditioned by its cultural circumstance. Meaning to say, if someone who wants to unfold the teachings to people, from other sannyas or Brahmins or so on, who comes from the Vedic Sanskrit culture. So you need to have a teaching communication which is fit for that kind of environment. So you have to bring Sanskrit and the background of the Vedas and so on. Because the students are conditioned by that culture, and you need to respect that and present the teachings according to that culture. You cannot go there and present the teachings like James Watts does. It's going to be something aligned to them. But when we go into United States, Europe, or here and there, and people have no relationship to the Indian culture and Sanskrit and Vedic ideas, you present this on that format, you're going to make everybody feel this, oh my God, I don't relate to Sanskrit, I don't relate to these rituals, I don't relate to those symbols of the self, I don't relate to any of that. And then only a few people are going to say, okay, I'm going to do the background, I'm going to start Sanskrit, I'm going to do this and this and that, and go through the whole conditioning of the mind, so to conform it to the background of the Vedic tradition. But it's not necessary, it's a waste of time. What we need is to present the essence of the teaching. What works is not the background, the cultural background. What works is the content, the nectar of the teaching of scriptures. And that's what James has made available for us all over the world, the nectar. Very dense, very directly, boom. He just throws it. And that's what we are doing here. And some of us appreciate and get it. And then, okay, now I have a value for knowledge, I know who I am, it's just a question of doing my nididhyasana and stay firm with my certainty. Some other people are going to say, no, it's nice, I like it, but I prefer my sadhanas. I want to do some actions to get an experience. Or I prefer to go to Shimaya Mission or to Dayananda Ashram and do a 3 years course where I'm gonna learn Sanskrit and pujas and many other disciplines. It depends on each one's vasana, inclination. But fundamentally, the Vedanta stands on its own. It does not depend on the background, culture background, but at the same time it needs to be present in harmony with the background we are getting it. It's very interesting to see people come. We Westerns, we come to India and we see this beautiful devotional tradition, all these symbols of the self. And the first good idea we have is, I want to know all about that. And I want to behave and do everything that the Indians are doing. And then they start going around the mountain barefoot 2-3 times a day sometimes, until they have a foot infection and some other problems. And a lot of the time they are just trying to do like the devotees of Jesus. They trying to imitate the Indian culture. If it's not our sin, it's not our sin. Okay? But if you have an inclination to really, oh no, I was born in my past life here and I want to go back to my fundamental nature of being a devotee of the Lord, and in this context, then go for it. Well, we don't need to. It's very simple. If you have bhakti, like I do, I have a bhakti temperament as well. I'm a yani, but I have a bhakti temperament. When I go to the ashram, I love the ashram, I like to sit there, man. I don't understand a word of those shantins, of those shantins praising Ishvara, praising the mountain, praising Ramana, and then the Vedic shantins praising the scriptures or repeating the verse of the scriptures. I don't understand any of that. But to me, there is only one sound, you know? It's like, oh God, Ishvara, the Lord. Either Ishvara 1 or Ishvara 2. So, we love you. Thank you, you know? You're so beautiful. Thank you. You know? And then, if you have that clear understanding in your mind, you say it's the self giving thanks to itself. The self in devotion and love towards itself. And you see all these individual jivas praising and worship the self. And some of them thinking that the self is something other than themselves. And then you see the ignorance at play, and they say, oh Maya, you are quite something. You know? You are playing your ignorance, and everybody's is just praising and loving themselves. Imagine that those symbols are something other than themselves. And then just to be in that environment is very purifying for the mind, and it's beautiful. There is so much love in the air. Devotion. A more congenial atmosphere for the seeker of self-knowledge may have been provided by the age of the Vedas than it's offered now in modern technocracy. That's interesting. In the past, life was different. We are not really bombarded by so much information. Societies were not as complex and dynamic. So we had the environment that maybe was more conducive to contemplation and knowledge and self-inquiry. But especially in the West, in the East. But nowadays, with these modern societies, since everybody's a householder, everybody has their own karma, and we cannot escape from the karma. We need somehow reconcile our householding parabdha karma, or values, or karma, with our desire for moksha. So we need to work both. People ask me that very often, but how can I do that? It's so difficult down there. You say, you have no other option. What other option? You want to drop out? Are you ready to drop out and escape? You think it's going to be of any benefit to you? You need to do both. And somehow you have to develop the trust in the scriptures to the degree that you begin risking a little bit more of those values that we have for security. and begin dedicating more and more of your mind, time and energy to contemplating on the knowledge, which is the only real valuable thing in life. I am that. I am free. So, and don't be afraid, because as our value, our understanding of the value of self-knowledge grows, side by side, our courage to risk more and more of those values for security. Come, we have the courage, no problem. Because we know. I thought there was so much value in a new relationship. I thought that was the most valuable thing, to have a big house and a new car every 3 years and so on. Have $1 million in the bank and so on. And now I'm smarter and wiser. I see that in truth, there is not much value in that. There is much other valuable things, and the most valuable thing, after all, is the knowledge I am the self. So with this knowledge in mind, we have no problem to begin risking that which in the beginning was a bit shaky. No? Oh no, I care for my security, I care for my pleasure, I care for my attachments, no? I care for this body, the first thing. So things change as our understand grows. Having offered, the words of Shankara are as relevant in this 21st century as it was in the 18th century. One need neither be a Brahmin nor a scholar of Sanskrit to learn how to discriminate Satya from Mithya, the self from the body-mind construct. Although it's natural to feel grateful to those who have a loving, preserved and transmitted this means of knowledge, to those who have so lovingly preserved and transmitted this means of knowledge. Having offered initial words of encouragement to the students, of course, to the student, the teacher, in the above verse, then summarize all that has been said thus far about the self. The descriptions, as we have understood, they are mostly negative descriptions, because there is not much we can say about the self except that we are it, and it is made of the nature of consciousness, existence, and limitlessness. So how can we go about, talking about all those words of the Upanishads if there is nothing to be said about it? It's an indirect means of knowledge. It goes about explaining all those misconceptions and negating those superimpositions, those projections we identify with aspects of our experience. And the whole process of the Upanishads is to disclose to us logically, based on our experience, that was a misunderstanding, a confusion, a projection, a superimposition. We took the body-mind as the self. Okay? So the words of the Upanishads goes about describing, and mostly by negation. So you thought you were this and that, you thought this experience was the best representation of what you are. No, mistake. This is just transient. It's not permanent, it's bound by time. It modifies constantly and so on. Or we keep negating. So in a way, it's a way of bringing up all these misconceptions about the nature of the I and negating them as no real. Fiction. Misapprehension. The 5 sheets and the 3 states have been shown to be the not-self, as we have done recently. That the self has no parts and is unaffected by its seeming associations are also negative descriptions. So when we say that the section is partless, the self is partless whole, we are negating any notion that misleads us to believe that the self is composed by some parts, by energy. So most common say how the self is energies. So it's again a negation. It's not made by parts. When we say it's actionless, it's again another negation. The self does not do any action. It's that which is actionless, although all and every action takes place by the light of the self. The self is what infuses in lives, objects to appear as dynamically acting. They are all negative descriptions. But the verse also offers a positive description. He offers a positive description as the witness. The self is self-luminous. It is its own light as well, the light that makes all that we see intelligible. So this is a positive assertion, positive description, statement. It's self-luminous. Does anybody have any trouble to understand that the self is luminous by its own light? The self does not need any other awareness to validate and support itself or to illumine itself. It shines on its own. It's self-conscious, self-existing. It does not require another existence to give, okay, self, I'm going to give you, this is from a parallel Satya dimension, and I'm going to borrow some existence to you so that you can appear as self-existing. No. The self is self-existing, self-conscious, self-luminous. It's self-validated. It is its own light as well, the light that makes all that we see intelligible. It is, as the Kenopanishad says, the eye of the eye. It's a very nice, simple analogy. The self is the eye of the eye. Well, we have these objects that have sense instruments and sense organs that allows us to see. But what is behind these eyes? What is behind the mind supporting these eyes? The self is the eye of the eye, is the ear of the ear. You see the body when somehow the prana leaves the body, the vital air, vital life leaves the body, and then the eyes are still there. Some people remain like that. But the eye behind the eyes is no longer in place. So the body immediately begins its fast decomposition. There is something missing there. A lot of scientists get fascinated by that because they don't believe, some of these people do not even, at least on those days when I used to read a bit about that, they don't believe in energy, much less in something called self, pure consciousness. No, they believe in reflect consciousness as the only consciousness there is, and it's different from person to person. So they used to get the body was there, it was breathing, and then as soon as that vital air leaves the body, they take the body, they were weighting the body all the time. And it's there on a scale. And then the moment the vital air, and then they weight it again to see if the weight has changed. Something left, something must have changed with this body, and they cannot figure out, because the weight remains the same. It's something so subtle that is weightless, formless, That is this intelligent prana, this extremely intelligent rajas, with all the knowledge necessary to operate this body. You know, we don't need to do almost none of our bodily functions. This prana is doing everything for us. I mean, we need to be thankful to Ishvara. Such intelligence. Yeah? Bring us here, and then we have a healthy body, a good mind, scriptures working for us. We have everything working for us. And then the whole system is, being taken care. We don't need to be concerned about how to breathe, digest, and poop or anything. It's all happening by itself. So it's good to give thanks to the Lord, And moreover, we have an intellect with a vasana for self-knowledge. So we have everything going for us. The eye of the eye. The role of the self in making all things intelligible may be better illustrated through a consideration of perceptions in the dream state. We see things in dreams. What is the instrument of vision there? When we are in the deep sleep, we see things, we see objects. Somehow we even see ourselves. Did you notice when we dream we see ourselves as well? More easily than in the waking state. In the waking state, ignorance tricks us and immediately we identify with the dense body. And then we have more difficult to objectify the seer of phenomena. But in the dream we see, there I go, I'm doing this, I'm doing, I say, no, and then you see what do you think. So we objectify ourselves better in the dream state.
You mean you see yourself like from the outside?
No, your eyes are closed, you're sleeping. Yeah.
But in the dream, you're seeing like you're seeing now, no? Or you see
Yeah, you see. Yeah.
I don't.
You see.
Oh, but that's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
We dream differently,
Huh?
We are dreaming differently. What
Yeah.
you're describing, I never experienced.
Yeah. Pay attention, because chances are that it's just a question of pay attention. We easily can see ourselves running, or going here, going there. It's more easily to objectify the Tejasa, which is the dreamer, than the visual, because the visual is so rooted in the body and identified with the body mind, and usually we don't have much objective view of the experience entity called visual. But in the dream, if we really pay attention, there is aspect of ourselves that are watching the dreamer doing its things, But that's not to the point here. The point here is that we see things in the dream. What is this instrument that allows us to see? To begin with, it is in the middle of the night, the curtains are closed, there is no moon, there is total darkness, we don't have the physical light, we don't have an open eye, but yet we are seeing things. We are seeing objects. What is the instrument of vision? The eyes are closed. There is no external light source. If we answer, it's the mind, then we are compelled to define the mind as self-luminous. Very nice, huh? We say, it's the night, it's the light, it's the mind that is seeing it. The mind has projected the dream. We know that the vasanas is a projection of the mental emotional content of the vasana. Vasana, awareness, shines the vasanas, and the vasana somehow begins sort of vibrate, and then it breaks the deep sleep and it projects some of its mental content. So when that happens, we can say, no, it's the mind that is providing the light. It's the mind that is projecting. The mind is projecting the light. You see the confusion? You see, but can the mind produce the light? If the mind is producing the light, it means that the mind is self-luminous. So it's not the mind that is producing the light that allows us to see objects in dream sleep. It's light itself reflects on the vasanas that somehow illumines those mental contents and projects them in the deep sleep state. In a state where the jiva is mostly conditioned by tamas, there is not much self-discrimination or the faculty of discrimination. We are easily deceived in dreams as well. And but it's the light of awareness, always the one and the only source of luminosity, not the mind. But the mind is nothing more than a series of thoughts. It's not self-luminous. Can a thought light up another thought? Mind is just thought, flux of thoughts that gives us an impression of continuity and substance. But it's just like thoughts. So thoughts, we have established already, they are not self-conscious, they are inert. Therefore, they cannot provide light to the objects of dream state. There is no such a thing as a illumining master thought. Still, there must be something that lights up the mind. Something that's not a thought, but that makes your thoughts think. Something that makes the thought intelligible, right? Vivifies, infuses the thought with life, consciousness, existence. The verse may be intended as an encouragement, but the seeker whose discrimination is still a work in progress. That's so nice. I don't know if this is coming from Ed, but he put some, I don't know if it's Dayananda's signature or Ed's signature. Sometimes he puts a nice humor there. He says the verse may be intended as an encouragement to the student, to the seeker, whose discrimination is still a work in progress. Work in progress appears dismayed and perhaps a little frightened by the negation of all that until now has defined his own self, his own world, his own identity. And now the scriptures, you say, no, it's you can discriminate it, but by the way, everything so far you have plant your identity upon is to be negated. So the student may feel a little frightened, and maybe there will be nothing left that defines me. I think there was this question the other, it's my webinar. Somebody was very much afraid the other days in my webinar with Brazil, by the negation of all that until now has defined his world. The following verse gave voice to this misgiving and address it. Very nice. We're going to begin verse 62 in about 10-15 minutes.